Hello, and welcome to Office Hours with Dr. Dan. I'm Dan. Today's question is, my professor or TA misgraded one of my assignments. What should I do? Right. And for this, an assignment can be a test, a quiz, homework, group project. It's just something that you've turned in that you've received a grade on. So there's kind of two main classifications for these kind of problems. And one is the simple math error where the professor or TA misadded your total number of points and you got fewer points than you were supposed to. And those are very easy to correct. You just go to the professor and show them the numbers and things are generally easy to resolve. The second is where you think something was graded incorrectly, an answer that you had you think is right and the professor graded it as wrong. And those can be a little more difficult to resolve. So first thing is, is the professor going over the assignment in class? And when I was a professor, if we had a test, a midterm, whatever you want to call it, quiz, I would go over those in class. I'd grade them and then we'd go over in class, spend some time doing that. So if the professor is going over the assignment in class and you're going along and following along to find out what the correct answers are, first off, make sure you're always marking on your paper in something other than what you took the test in. So if you took the test in pencil, make your corrections with ink. If you took the test in ink, make sure you use a different color of ink. And this just removes any doubt of what your original work was and then what you wrote when the things were being corrected, when the assignment was being gone over in class. And then wait till the end of class before you go up to your professor. Get through the entire assignment. So if there was something wrong that you don't agree with on problem one, don't just immediately put up your hand and say, hey, there's something wrong with this. Let the professor get through the entire assignment, and then they'll usually say something to the effect of, if there's questions, come see me after class or during office hours, and then that's when you should go and bring those concerns up. If it's something that the professor is not going over in class, for instance, a homework assignment or some kind of paper that they just hand back, and you're going through it later, again, go through your whole assignment. Don't just say, oh, well, here's question number 3 out of 10, and there was an issue here. I'm going to go run right to the professor about this problem, and then you get that resolved, and you have to go back and say, oh, there was something on question 6. So get through your whole assignment, find out if there's any things that you are concerned about, any things you need to talk to your professor about, and then go do that in one fell swoop, not just here or there. And before you go to your professor, you have to make up your mind, is going to the professor worth the number of points that I could get back? If you're going to have the potential for 1,000 points throughout the entire class period, throughout the semester, is it worth going to fight over 1 or 2 points? And that's completely a personal thing for you. If you think, well, I'm owed this point or two and that could make a difference by the time the end of the semester comes around for one grade or the next, fine, that's great. You've made the decision that yes, it's worth going on to talk to your professor about. So it's worth putting the time in to do that. Keep in mind that if you go to your professor and that professor takes your assignment back to look at the issues, oh yeah, I misgraded this part, but then they're going through to make sure they didn't do something else wrong, are they going to find, well, I didn't take off points here where I should have? Right? So you have to balance. If you're going through your assignment and you notice, oh, I didn't get points taken off here when I should have, what am I going to do? So some professors might just look at, oh, you're worried about problem number 3, I'm only going to worry about problem number 3, whereas others may go through just to make sure they didn't make an error in some other part of the test. It's better to approach a professor very soon after you discovered the error. If you can do it right after class and they say, okay, well, make an appointment or come to see me with office hours, you've made first contact. You have gone to them and told them that there's something you're concerned about so you can move on. If it's an assignment that wasn't gone over in class and office hours is a week away, your professor or TA is going to be out of town, then send them an email that, hey, I have an issue or a question or a concern about such and such problem on this assignment. I'm going to come by office hours on this day, or I'd like to make an appointment, just so you have brought it to their attention that you have a concern as soon as you've noticed it. It's not 3 or 4 weeks later that you're worried you're coming to them for a question or a concern about the first homework assignment of the semester. And when you go talk with your professor or TA, bring your original assignment with you so you can point out your concerns. And you may want to consider making a copy of that assignment just so you have something if the professor wants to take the original so they can go back and grade it. Just so if something gets lost, you still have something to go back to the professor with. And if you're going to argue or your concern is that you made a mistake on the test and you got 3 points off on that for that mistake, and someone else that you were talking with made the exact same mistake on the exact same problem and only got 1 point taken off for their mistake, if that's your concern, then bring a copy of that work from the other student. It's like, well, I made this mistake on this problem and so made this mistake on this problem. Or not that you have to throw someone else under the bus or talk about someone else specifically, but you just say, well, here's a page from someone else's test that they gave me, and there's this amount of points taken off. So the professor can see, okay, well, I mismarked the points, and go on. If you think that your answer is correct, but that the professor marked it wrong, bring back up why you think that is true. So if you were taking a multiple choice test, and there were potentially more than one choice that was a correct answer, then show why you thought your answer was correct. There's the quote-unquote most correct answer, and then there's an answer that's correct but not the most correct. Me personally, I never gave multiple choice tests. I taught engineering classes. We just don't do multiple choice tests most of the time, and I never did. But to me, it's a bad question if there can be more than one right answer and a student can only select one answer choice. Really the quote-unquote most correct answer can be, by a vary of degrees. So if you're going back and arguing over a multiple choice question, then show why you think your answer choice could also have been a correct answer. Bring in some documentation, a passage from the textbook or something like that. When you're meeting with your professor, be direct but be polite. Don't go in with a chip on your shoulder or an attitude of, the professor was doing this just to be mean to me or to screw me. They have it out for me. That's not a good way to go in. If your professor starts being a jerk to you, then it's not necessarily going to do anybody any good if you're being a jerk back. If you run into that case where the professor's being a jerk and then just not going to hear anything, then you may need to take that up the chain of command, which I'll talk about here in a minute. Then you don't need to feel embarrassed about going to talk to your professor about something that may have been misgraded. Larger classes or even in small classes, mistakes happen. So just make sure that you go in polite, say, here's my concern. And at the same time, you should be saving everything that gets passed back to you. All your tests, quizzes, homeworks, whatever. Everything that you save everything that you get passed back should be saved so that you can keep track, so you can be calculating your own grade. All right? At any point during the semester, you should have an idea of what your grade is. All right? That's going to be important if you need to determine, well, do I need to drop this class or not drop this class, or do I need to put more work in, or do I need to revise my study habits because what I've been doing isn't effective for this class. So you need to keep track of that so you know what's going on. My brother, when he was doing his undergrad, he was keeping track, and he thought he'd earned a B for the class. It turned out his report card was either a D or an F. So he went to the professor. It's like, I think I did pretty well on the final. I don't think I did that poorly. And the professor was initially like, well, sometimes people don't do as well in the finals as they thought. But my brother was polite but persistent, and then they went back over the grades and found out that something was entered into the grade spreadsheet incorrectly. So he did have a B instead of the D or F that was initially issued. So he was able to get that grade corrected. So it does pay to do that, especially when you're dealing with a final grade. And what are you going to do if the professor just says, no, I'm not going to change it up? Just because I took 1 point off for this person and 3 off for you, I'm not going to change that. It'll come out in the wash. Or I meant to take 3 off for that mistake and I just made an error on that and it should have been 3 off. So if they don't make the change, then either A, you can accept that, or B, you can potentially go and argue that up the chain of command. And the chain of command is, if you're having a discussion with your TA and your TA won't budge, well, who does your TA work for? The professor. If you're having a talk with your professor and the professor isn't budging, well, who does your professor answer to? And that may be a division head or department head, and then up the chain is the dean of the college, and then the provost and the president of the university. So you have to determine, well, how far up the chain are you willing to go? And it's really in your best interest to follow that chain of command. Some universities, the president has a quote-unquote open door policy where students are welcome to come in and discuss anything with him or her at any time they're in the office. And that's all fine and dandy, but if you've talked to your TA about some points on a homework assignment and you're not getting the resolution you want, and then you go all the way up to the president of the university. I mean, the president of the university may very well listen to you and say, okay, I'll have to look into that. So then the president of the university has to go to the provost, who's going to have to go back down to the dean, who's going to have to go to the department head, who's going to have to go to the professor, who's going to have to go to the TA. And that's a lot of people who are being inconvenienced because you didn't follow the chain of command. So it's really in your best interest to not jump the chain, because if you jump the chain, then the people who you've gone to talk to are just going to have to go back down and talk to the people underneath them to get the facts about what's going on. So just keep that in mind, because you really don't want to create bad blood between you and the administrators of your college and university, because if you have to go get a letter of recommendation sometime or ask for a letter of recommendation, if you upset the apple cart, are you really going to be able to get a good letter of recommendation from those folks? So just bear that in mind as you're going up the chain. I'm not saying just let things drop if you think you've got a good case and those points may turn out to be very important to you. I mean, if you know you have a 99% average in the class and we're talking about a couple of points on a homework assignment, you've got enough cushion. That's probably not something you want to go fight for. But again, that's totally up to you, whatever you want to do. So hopefully this has helped. Take care, and I'll see you next time.